Great to have you back, Niels. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you very much, Sonia.
So, as you can feel, I know Niels. But for everyone else not knowing who you are, um, would you invite us to your interesting journey you had throughout the years, and then skip to part two? What do you represent today, and what's your role in that?
Yeah, sure. Like you said, I've I've had an interesting past, done lots of things, but I'm currently working for Cendyn, where we have a number of solutions for the hotel world. We have CRM, we have web design, we have revenue management, we have CRS since the Pegasus merger. So there are lots of different things that we can bring. What we always say is we want to bring that entire circle of customer value. So what we're actually doing is we're migrating all of our products that we have to a single database so that everything can be powered from that single customer data platform. Because that single source of truth is something that's really valuable. So that single source of truth for us is the most important thing. But then also to work, like for instance Marion and Tony said, sometimes you need to work with specialists that know better and that can add more value to you. But they can use our data platform through an open API to build that and add that additional functionality. But so we have various different platforms, and it's a great company to work for.
And it's an interesting journey because with all the mergers and the acquisitions happening in the last years,
Yeah.
I pictured it quite challenging. And as you know, I have a background with Pegasus as well, so can only congratulate to that and say hello to the team in Scottsdale.
I will do.
In preparation of our fireside chat, you mentioned you would like to speak about a new perspective, right? When it comes to especially guest communication and how to include them, the ethics of communication. Can you bring us in on that?
Well, the one thing one of the things I always hate when I go to conferences is people that talk about their products and what their product does better than other products. And, I think that's not the value of a conference. The value of a conference is to learn and to learn about questions, learn about things that you hear in the industry. That for me is the value of a conference. So I don't want to lecture people here on stage. They can come to me later and ask me about it, absolutely. But here on stage I want to talk about something else. And ethics is something that I often hear. And it's not just hoteliers, it's especially non-hoteliers that ask me things like, how can you hoteliers always put up the rates when it becomes busy? That's so unethical. You continue to put up rates, and you just try to capitalize on busy periods, and so that's one of the things that I want to talk about because, like you said, I think it's purely communication, and leading on from that example, what I always say is, listen, as a hotelier, we should never communicate, we have a daily rate. Because if you have a daily rate, that's the perception that guest will have. How come your rate is this one day and that another day? So if we say, listen, this is the highest rates, and this is going back to the old days where we had rack rates, right? And this shows my age, but if you do the strike-through rates, that brings us back to retail. And one of the reasons why Booking.com always does those strike-through rates is because people love that. And that's why I don't understand why hoteliers don't want to adopt that. And they say, no, we want to stick to our daily rate. So yeah, but then you're not showing the discount, and then you're just showing every time that rate goes up. You don't show when the rate goes down. And showing that discount gives the guest the feeling, oh wait, I'm getting a discount on that. And then if you're in real deep shit, let's say, then you really need to reduce your rate. The guest goes like, oh wow, I'm getting a real good discount, right? So that's one of the things I find a mistake that a lot of hoteliers make, but also a lot of providers.
Before you go to the next step, because let's emphasize that a little, because obviously it's easy to say, why don't you? Why don't you? How should they do that?
Well, you know, it all comes down obviously to having the right tools, and you know, I'm not going back to our tools, but having the right tools is the one thing, but it is about that communication, right? And it's if you communicate something and you don't communicate the whole story, it doesn't show that full picture. And that showing the full story by saying, okay, this is the highest rates and this is how much discount you're getting, that's showing the whole story. That's when you go into Saturn, you will see the televisions advertised, they have the full price, and then they strike through, even if that's not the real full price, and even if that's a fake full price, they will still put the full price there to show you the discount you're getting.
Right. As we're streaming live to YouTube, there's as well Conrad, and there's MediaMarkt, and there's other brands where you can buy your TVs. So, I founded a storytelling company years ago, and we transferred now into a digital agency. So I always look on how can you explain something, how can you tell a story, how can you frame something, how can you build metaphors. And you already gave an example of striking full price or whatever, but the opposite of it is obviously raising your price, right? So how can you, what are means of explaining such manners? What are means of, how can you approach your customer and explain, why is this going on? Why am I raising, dropping, whatever? Why am I sold out and you have to go to another hotel next door? How can you approach that? Okay.
You know, I think there are a couple of things there, but raising the price. You know, one of the things that hoteliers were asking me during COVID is, you know, I have to provide extra services, but the city is empty, so I have to reduce my price. And I said, well, no, you don't necessarily need to reduce your price, because people during COVID need to travel, and the people that are traveling need to travel. So if you tell them, listen, we're keeping this, you know, we give you this price, it might seem very expensive, but we have a lot of additional services that we provide. We clean the rooms much better than we even better than we did before, let's put it like that. We have all kinds of sanitization procedures in place. You know, we leave rooms empty between your rooms. So you're basically giving them all of the information that explains to your guest why it's more expensive. And, you know, leading on from that, when you say, okay, when you fill the hotel and then you overbook and you have to book out, this is, you know, I'll never forget, and this was it was Crown Plaza, Hanover Airport at that time, but it was, is actually, you know, now it's changed to a different brand. I won't name the brand for YouTube reasons. But I'll never forget, we were booked out and I had one guest arriving and I had no more rooms. And the next, I had already done my ring round, and the next available hotel I found that had some availability was in Osnabrück. So, you know, a taxi would have been very expensive. So when the guests arrived, my heart sank, and I was on night duty, and I thought, oh my God, this guest has come, and I have to tell him I don't have a room for him. And I basically made up a story. I said, listen, you know, we have this, your room, unfortunately, the toilet's broken, it's flooded, and I cannot sell you that room. But, you know, I'm going to have to book you out to Osnabrück. And he said, I don't want to go to Osnabrück. Show me the room. I can sleep in that room. I said, oh, no, it stinks. And that. No, just show me the room. And you know, I'll see if I can sleep in it. I said, oh, no, I can't show you the room because, you know, it's really bad. And then in the end, you know, I had to admit that I was lying to him because I just, you know, made up this story. And that, of course, was the worst thing I could do to him because it made him even more upset. So, you know, from then on, I basically...
And that's why you swapped on the technology side then.
Exactly.
Working for someone else now.
But, you know, from then on, I always said, okay, I'm going to tell the truth, but I'm going to be very open. And from that moment on, and even at a later stage when I moved to other hotels, if I knew there was going to be, you know, even when I was not responsible for it anymore, and I was in revenue management, and I'd caused that, overbooking, and I knew that people had to be walked, I would actually come to the desk and I would actually help explain it.
Yeah.
And I would basically say, listen, we're totally to blame. We made a mistake. I'm really sorry about it. The reason we do that is because sometimes people just don't show up, and we don't have any way of charging them because rules and regulations, and therefore we lose out. If we don't sell that room tonight, we can never sell that room again. So we're a business. We need to we have our shareholders to please, and so I always take that route. And people 9 out of 10 times will understand. There's some people that will always be difficult about it. But as long as you give them, compensation for it, you explain what happened, and you're completely honest, and you basically say, yeah, we fucked up, and excuse me, YouTube, we effed up. So that's really what it's all about, I think.
So you spoke a lot about communication, open communication, and improving things, and being more open-minded about stuff. And obviously you represent a communication tool as well.
Yeah.
So how can we all, from a hotelier perspective, improve communication with the guest? How can we improve the guest journey?
I think one of the things that I still believe, people always say, Amazon, we should follow Amazon's example. I think Amazon is terrible at marketing. And the reason I say that is Amazon always advertises stuff that I've already bought. I always get emails and I always see pop-ups of, are you still interested in this? I've already bought that. Why are you asking me if I'm still interested in that?
Because you have a fake profile.
But that's something, we as hoteliers have information on our guests. We have a guest database. Use that guest database in order to communicate. So if you can personalize and send out, communication, even, confirmation emails, right? Send out that confirmation email. If that guest is coming with children, put some images with children in there. If that guest is coming as a couple, then put a nice, cocktail on there by the swimming pool, things like that. Exactly. So you basically start communicating to that guest rather than, at a broad audience. And then use the information that you have on that guest in order to, communicate with that guest. And if you know that that guest is going to stay with you already, they've already booked, then don't send them any communication because they're already coming, or send them communication relating to that stay. And what I still see too much of is that, it's relatively anonymous. Yes, we will personalize it with hello, Daniel, or hello, Mr. So-and-so, but it, for me, is not personal enough, and I believe that we in the hotel business, because we have so much information about our guests, we can be far more personal and can be far more sort of targeted. And if I hear people saying, yeah, we did a marketing campaign and we sent out 100,000 emails, I cringe. I go like, oh my God, that's such a generic campaign. Because there's no way that you're going to be able to message and send a message across that will appeal to all 100,000 people, right? And I'd far rather send a campaign that is really targeted towards 1,000 people, that is really targeting their needs. That's what they like. That's the type of guest they are. That's far more effective, and then you'll see the click-through rate and the book-through rate is going to be far higher than if you send that 100,000 email blast.
From your experience in that field, is the majority of hotel brands already doing that today, or is it rather the top-notch 20%?
It's
and why?
Good question. It is the top 20%. Some are attempting to do it. Some are better at it than others. But even if you look at things like loyalty, there's a lot that's being attempted with loyalty. And I again don't see enough being done with it. Because of my job, I'm a member of about, I think, 100 different loyalty programs, right? And I get...
And your points dropped dramatically the last 2 years, most likely. Yeah. Like mine, they're all gone.
Well, that's unfortunate. But, I think people say loyalty is dead. I don't believe so. It depends on on how you do it, right? Even if you say, listen, we've got a portal that you can log into, and if you log into that portal, you get special deals, you get special rates. It's not about the points collection, because nowadays, points collection is a little bit old-fashioned unless it becomes something really exciting, right? Unless you can collect points and get an iPad, unless you can collect points and get a tremendous experience. We're now working with a hotel chain that is part of a bigger global brand. They have multiple different brands under the same brand name. And what they're doing is we're tying the loyalty club together with all of those different loyalty clubs so they can use it across the brand. And now they're inviting external brands in there as well. So you actually have coffee places, so you can spend your points on espressos or latte macchiatos, or you can spend them on whatever you want. So you earn points in hotels, but you earn points in the coffee shop, you earn points everywhere. So that becomes something that is really interesting, because it's not just hotel related. And when people say loyalty programs are not interesting or they don't work anymore, yes, if all you give is free hotel rooms, yeah, that's probably not going to work. But if you tie it into together with other exciting things, then it can actually become something really exciting.
Are there many showstoppers in that context, or is there a lot of tech stacks that enable that today already? Because obviously, you as Cendyn, as an example, you could do so many things, right? But as long as it's not integrated into these all different outlets, there's going to be manual processes involved, and then it doesn't work anymore, right?
Yeah, I don't think, manual process is never a good idea. Manual process always leads to failure and leads to missing things. So if you do something, it should be automated. But I think it's worth investing a little bit of money into doing something like that. There are suppliers other than Cendyn that do it as well. So, middleware is something that facilitates that, and there are a number of middleware companies out there that do it. So, I don't say it's certainly not just Cendyn. We're very good at it, but but it's it's just not just us. But I think when it comes to hoteliers, it's quite often you want to play the safe route, and I think what the student hotel have done very well is that they've gotten a new concept, which is great, that really works, and as I say, they stick to their vision. I think the one danger that you always need to, I always say, not stick to your vision, identify who you want to appeal to, identify your target audience and stick to your target audience. Because one of the things that happens is that tastes change and that interests change. So if that target audience interest changes or the taste change, then you potentially need to shift your model to continue to appeal to that target audience. And there's one Dutch brand that does trendy limited service hotels, and I won't name any names, but a son of a friend of mine who's now 19, he actually referred to that, oh yeah, they're getting a bit tired, those hotels. Whereas we in the hotel industry still consider them to be, quite, advanced and quite forward-thinking. And the 19-year-old is actually saying, no, they're actually getting a bit tired. I look for something other exciting. And student hotel was one of the concepts that he really liked, right? So that's it's, and so you can't get complacent, and your target audience, in the end, that's who you're trying to attract, right?
We still have a few minutes. Are there questions from the audience? Does someone want to change the way they communicate with their guests and learn from my dear colleague here, or try to tackle new things? Looking at you, Diana. Okay. Well, feel free. Just raise your hands, and we'll get a microphone around. I have another question, if you want to.
Yeah, no. There's one other thing that I often get asked, and that is about corporate contracts, right? My wife works in sales for a big hotel organization, and she battles with the revenue management team because the revenue management team encourages her to sell last from availability rates. And then what happens is those corporates start shouting at her when revenue management closes out their rates, and they suddenly can't book rates. And the corporates come to her and say, listen, we bring you so much business. Why are you not, why can't we book our rates? And suddenly now we have to book bar rates. What's the point of having a corporate contract? And so that's where I always say, there it is very important to be very clear in advance. And I believe what she's being forced to do, you should actually give that corporate client the choice. You should say, there are two options. I'm going to give you a lower rate, which potentially is more restrictive, so it will be closed out earlier or more flexible. Or I will give you slightly higher rates, but then you will always have that availability. You will always be guaranteed that rate. So it's your choice. So then you get, well, how do I know when that rate is going to be restricted? I said, well, let's create a demand calendar. We all in hotels know when we're going to have big fairs, messen, special events going on. You all know when the rates are going to be low. Of course, there will be periods where it's going to be up and down, but you can generally say these periods is when you're going to be able to book that rate, these periods you won't be able to book that rate, and these periods is a guess. So you can say, okay, this is my demand calendar for the year. So these are the periods that you can definitely get that lower rate. These are the periods you can definitely not get that lower rate. And then some corporates actually say, listen, I can actually plan my events surrounding those lower occupancy rates. And I've actually seen some hotels achieve really good successes with this demand calendar, because what they found is that their low demand periods started seeing increase in corporate bookings, because they actually said, oh, let's, now we know when they're busy. So, in November, that hotel's actually going to be quite quiet. So let's plan that conference that we were planning in November, and then we can get a good rate at that hotel. Let's plan it there, right? So you're actually helping that guest plan. You're helping that company save money. And in doing so, you're also giving them the feeling that you're really trying to work with them to find a solution for them. But you also explain at the same time that, yes, if you get that lower rate, it will be more restrictive, and I have to be more restrictive because in the end, I need to make money as well. And so you basically give them the choice, and in doing so, it's, again, you're taking away that discussion that then erupts later on, because you've been very clear right from the onset. And that's, again, it comes down to communication. Communication is the key bit in, in all of what we do. It's being very, it's the same with restrictions, right? Like longer length of stays. I've seen situations where you put in the terms and conditions, if you check out early, you're going to have an early departure fee, and then people don't read that, and they check out early. It sometimes happens, and then you suddenly, what's an early departure? Why do I have to pay an early departure fee? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah. But if you can formulate that as well, and you can, maybe make that an extra step. Say, okay, you're getting this cheap rates because you're staying for 7 nights. If you don't want to stay for 7 nights, we're going to have to charge you an early departure fee. Are you aware of that? So just make that, and then you basically reaffirm, and you're explaining again why you have that charge. So it becomes much clearer to the guest. And then when the guest checks in, you can do the same thing. You can say, okay, I see you're staying for 7 nights. Great. If you don't have the wonderful system that they have here where you can do your self-check-in, but then you can still make that box pop up and say, just be aware this is a special rate for a 7-night stay. So be aware that if you want to check out early, you will be charged an X amount.
You definitely speak more than I do. That's great. Covered everything. So, talking about evolution in the communication space, in the tech space within hospitality, what's going to change? What do you currently see in the developments, in the discussions? What's the thoughts of people? How do you? I mean, you mentioned some stuff in the beginning, obviously, but how how do we see a big shift in communication, not only from a perspective point of view, because we talked ethics, but as well from a technology point of view and from a guest journey point of view?
I think personalization is everything, but I think personalization via the right communication tool and communication medium is also important. Our future vision is to be able to have various marketing campaigns running at the same time for different types of guests, and then to be able to say, I need to send that campaign at this point in time to that guest via WhatsApp, and to that guest via WeChat, and to that guest via email, because that is their preferred method of communication, but also based on that guest's preferences. So if you know that that guest has stayed with you 20 times but never ever been to your restaurants, there's no point to send them communication on your restaurant. Send them something else on the spa that they visited 9 out of 10 times. So I think it's very important that it's more targeted, more personalized, and more relevant to that guest. And then bring things together where you basically say the revenue management system tells the marketing automation tool when do we need business, when do I need to communicate, because when is the period that those people are going to book, and what facilities in the hotel should I offer. And that should be an automated process where the system just decides those are the people I need to target, these are the means of communication, and that's really what we need to move towards.
If there's a hotelier in the audience or in the online audience that thinks like, oh wow, what Niels said, that sounds really interesting, compelling, but I have no clue where to start, what would you recommend? What's the starting point? The
starting point, I always say, marketing for me, you can start with something as simple as an Excel list extract from your PMS, right? If you want to start marketing, you don't need to immediately run. You need to learn to walk before you can run. And you need to start looking at that Excel extract from your PMS and say, okay, what are relevant things to me as a hotelier, and what are relevant things to the guest? Try and find some common denominators between those guests. What are guests from Berlin specifically interested in? What are guests from London specifically interested in? So you're really trying to target and trying to find common denominators, and that's when you start thinking as to, okay, what can I then offer these guests that would appeal to this specific group? And try to start building your own kind of target audiences in your mind. But the one thing you should never forget is what is your main, it's an experience. And yeah, we're very, very different from the hotel next door because we're a totally different experience. And our rooms, there's have X and Y, but the minute they open and it gets, they start going into normal operations, they forget all about that experience, and it's back to hotel rooms. And it's like we need to fill those hotel rooms. And then the competitor next door is actually a competitor, and it's no longer differentiated by that experience. And I think we should always remember what it is that we're trying to deliver and who that target audience is that we're trying to deliver it to.
Okay. Good starting point with the Excel. Let's see if anyone is willing to do that. If not, you can ask Niels. He was happy to provide a template or whatever. So we're overdue already for since 1 minute. Thank you so much, Niels, for your 30 minutes, and I hope you will have a lovely afternoon with everyone around.
I will.
We have another fireside chat coming up. I'm luckily replaced, taking a break. And is it you taking over? My dear friend and colleague Alex is taking over. And so I wish you a wonderful next 30 minutes with Alex. Thank you so much, Niels.
You're welcome. Thank you.